Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rise and Lead Women's Leadership Perspectives. I am your host, ChèRee Wiley, founder and CEO of Diverse Perspectives, where we are dedicated to empowering growth, transforming lives, and reimagining success one client at a time. I am so excited about this episode. You know that March has been all about women's history and women working together and how we're stronger together. And so to continue this conversation and wrap up this month, we have a phenomenal guest with us, getting ready to bring her up on stage. I have known her for a few years now, and she is just absolutely amazing. And so I am so excited about the knowledge that she's going to impart today as we have this very powerful conversation as two women who work together. We actually flow together quite often. And so it is my honor to bring on Mrs. Kisha Thompson. Hi, Keisha. I'm so excited for you to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, this is just such a powerful moment. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to just introduce yourself to the audience before we jump into this powerful conversation.
Absolutely. So, of course, my name is Kisha Thompson, and I can start out with saying that I have such a heart for women. I believe that God has called me to that area of just pulling women out of darkness into God's marvelous light. And, for me, I can say that I'm a treasure finder, right? I'm a gift finder. It's who I am.
Recording in progress.
I have 20 years experience in corporate America, leadership and development, as far as work goes. And then as far as faith-based and the kingdom, I'm an overseer over a actual ministry at my church called Red Jewels, and we minister to women that are divorced and married, separated, domestic violence. So it's a support group that's open to members and non-members, and it's a great journey of helping women all around the world. I'm also a missionary. I go overseas often, and everywhere I go, I'm like a magnet to women who need healing and to be whole in Christ.
Thank you so much, and such powerful work. So we do work alongside each other. I am assistant overseer over Rare Jewels, and so we have the opportunity to flow together. And so when I was thinking about this topic, I couldn't think of a better person because Overseer Kisha does a great job of modeling the things that we have talked about in this last month. And so we're just going to jump into these questions because I know that you all are very interested in what she has to say around this because she is walking this thing out on a regular basis as a leader. So the first question is, what does it mean when you hear the word or you think about the word or the phrase powerful team? What does that mean to you?
So when I think about powerful team, I think about unity, right? But before a team can be unified, the leader has to be worth following. Okay.
Yeah.
So as you know, for me as an overseer and a leader over our support group that we have at our church, um, if I'm not worth following, then what is the purpose? So before that happens, I believe the leader needs to make sure he or she is on point. But I would say the answer to that question would be, a powerful team is a unified team, but you have to get to that point of unity if the leader is worth following.
Absolutely. That is such a great point. We have to model that. And that is how we create those teams, right? Like unity starts from the top. And whatever you establish is what people they'll meet you where you are. We talk about, people's expectations. If your expectations are high, people will meet you there, right? But if they're low, people will meet you there as well. And so that is an excellent point.
Yeah.
And so when we're thinking about unity, we're also considering like this human centered work, right? Because we are, as leaders, we deal with human beings, humans that have, attitudes, they have moods, they have good days, they have bad days. Sometimes they're bringing their
Mhm.
burdens into a space with us.
Mhm.
And we have to be very mindful of how we navigate that when
Right.
we are going forward and when we are flowing. So
Mhm.
when you think about that, like, what do you think is the key when we're dealing with human-centered perspectives? How do we bring people together in order to build these teams, in order to help people sometimes get out of their own way, in order for us to accomplish this goal of unity and get to where we're trying to reach?
Totally understand. So the root word in human centered is human, right? So human to me is, as a leader, you have to give your people grace and understand that they are human. They're not robots. They, that life, as the world says, life is lifing. Yeah, life be lifing. So what that means is you have to give your people grace, right? And you have to, in corporate America, one thing that we learned is the soft skills, right? Soft skills is, listening, not to give orders, or because, we're not dealing with little kids, right?
Mhm.
And even if someone is listening that is dealing, with little kids, just to listen to what I'm saying. Basically, soft skills like, empathy, right? Listening, not to respond quickly, but listening to understand, because your people need to know that you love them and you're listening. So it's almost like, okay, what, human centered, right? So, so basically, I want my people to say, Kisha treats me like a human. You know what I'm saying? She doesn't judge. She's not, thinking that she's better, or whatever. But, human centered to me is just human, treating them how they're supposed to be treated, with love. I think there was more in that question, but I focused on that. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
No, that's
Good.
spot on and so good. And you brought up a lot of different points here because it's definitely, you said this from the beginning, having that foundational, these relationships and these connections is so powerful when it
Mhm.
comes to this, because it allows us to really see people as people. A lot of times, in spaces, we know we've been in these corporate spaces where people, sometimes leaders, sometimes look at the members on their team as like these numbers, right? Or it's about the
Mhm.
productivity, it's about pushing out whatever it is. But they seem to forget that if you don't handle the human side of things very, intentionally, you end up losing out on all these other areas, because
Mhm.
we know in companies where they do focus on the human side of it, you think about places like Google and other companies, Microsoft, companies that are actually taking out the time to really consider, what do our people need, and
Mhm.
how are we looking at the human side of things in
Mhm.
order to push productivity, right?
Right.
Because the whole
Right.
point of this, the conversation, is about innovative and collaborative teams. But in order for a team to be innovative and collaborative, the human side needs to be well tended. And so, as you said, focusing on that and understanding that people are people and they have needs, and that you are, even as you said, as you approach them, talked about in the last episode, how oftentimes people will talk to members on the team as though they are children, which
Mhm.
automatically kind of shuts them down. That
Yep.
lack of respect, and understanding that just because I'm in a position of leadership doesn't mean that I get to talk down to you, or that I'm going to treat you a certain way. If I'm a good leader, which again you are, and I so admire your leadership style, I am able to bring out the best in people, to bring out things that they don't necessarily even know that they're capable of. But I
Mhm.
do that through those connections, through getting to know them, through valuing them as people, because that all builds trust, right?
Mhm.
And we
Mhm.
cannot grow these teams to the place we need them to be without that trust. The trust has to happen. So
Yes.
building on that conversation, so what are some things, practices that you would suggest to leaders in order to cultivate these type of environments where collaboration can grow, where people do trust each other, where the culture is positive?
Mhm. Um, I believe that you should definitely do heart checks with your team, right? what a heart check looks. And let me just back up, as far as a heart, your heart is considered your soul. So it's a soul check. And a lot of times there is wounds and there's trauma. And it's not that that you say, well, I'm not a therapist, so let them call a therapist for that. No, if you're their leader, you're their mentor. Period. So you're checking in on them, and a heart check is, call them. Hey, how are you doing? What's happening? And so as I was saying before, soul wounds, soul trauma, so many, it's so many things that trigger certain situations that they really don't have any control over. So you want to find out, check in with your people, right? If you're in that space to definitely do that. Also, team building, do things together to gel the team together and to make them one. So on my resume, it's the top of my resume, it says relationship builder. So a relationship builder, if anybody knows the book of Nehemiah, that's my favorite book in the Bible, because this man was a builder of people, places, and things, and he not only did he rebuild that wall in Jerusalem, but he brought people together from everywhere to help rebuild. How did he do that? How did he do that? How did he unify? So I often study Nehemiah. So if you are a project manager or process manager, something like that, you like to build teams, Nehemiah is a great book in the Bible for you.
So good. And all of the things that you said, just the power of gelling together, coming together, and again gets back to that, it all goes back to that unity, right? Because that is how we build that. And so continuing with that, what are some barriers do you think that cause people not to put in that work, that people work, in order to push these things forward?
So, a lot of, barriers, well, one, I would say is what they've been through, what they saw. Like, I went back to, the soul and the trauma and different things. A lot of people, when they go to the next space, like say, next business or next job or next ministry or whatever it is, they have soul. There's people say baggage, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's baggage that they have. And that can be a barrier, because it's like, now I have to, as a new leader to them, I have to build their trust, because they're broken. They were hurt. This is what happened to them, whatever that looks like, in that space. And so that is one of the most biggest barriers for me, is that. And then just simple things like communication. A lot of times people see you, like you see the outside, but you don't know the inside. So again, what I'm hearing is trust. Basically that's a barrier. Is you have to trust your leader, and trust the God in your leader, that they will lead you into in a good way, definitely.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because we've had this conversation on the show a lot of times about the fact that we know, there are examples of good leaders, but there are also examples of leaders that are struggling. And so for the people that may be watching this, who are trying to build their leadership capacity, but also can acknowledge that they've seen leaders who don't do a good job of this, and so they may not have that mirror, right? And so for them, what would you suggest that they would do to build their leadership capacity? Because of course a podcast like this is one way they can do that, but what are some other things that might be great for a leader to try to do if they don't have a good example of what leadership should look like and they want to lead in a different way?
I would say, cut out the micromanaging, right? So let me reverse that. Trust your people, right? So when you give your people assignments to do, trust that they'll do it. And if they don't, then, we'll talk about that. But, that's the first thing that you need to do is trust your people. Now, let me just say this. This thought came to me. There's two different types of leadership to me, right? There is managers a manager that manages, right? To me, they're managing everything. And then there's leaders. A leader is a person. The difference. Now, let me just say this. Some years ago, I worked as a personal banker in a bank, and I remember I had a manager that was always standing behind me, even though I did my work. I did very well, because we're in banking, so we have goals and everything. So I did well, right? But I noticed, but she would stand over me all the time, and she didn't trust that I would do well, right? And when one day she was out of the office, right, for like a couple of days, and I remember I was able to be me, and of course still follow the rules of the bank and everything like that. But I brought in so much sales and so much in. And I remember speaking to one of my coworkers, and I said, what is the difference with her? And she told me that, she said there's two different styles. One is a manager, and that's all she knows how to do. Is not she, but they know how to do. It's nothing wrong with that. It depends on what space you're in, is manage. But then there's leaders that lead you to be better than yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, their assignment is to push you to greatness. That's what a leader is supposed to do, period. They're supposed to, they're the gift finders. So they're supposed to provoke you, right? They're supposed to challenge you. They're supposed to make you mad. They're supposed to make you cry in a good way, because it's like they see, it's almost like a mirror in a sense. Certain leaders will see themselves in that person. And they're like, man, you remind me of myself when I was younger or whatever. Let me mentor, let me pour this on you if you want to receive it, and that's what I think, the difference as far as a leader goes.
No, I absolutely agree. And there's a quote out there that says micromanagement is literally, it stifles creativity and innovation, because again, how can anybody think with someone over their shoulder? And lots of us have been in that space. I know that I have been in places where I couldn't really be, and I am a creative person. Like, I'm always creating. But when someone is constantly, well, what about this? And what about this? And you should do this, and you should do it that way. It's like, okay, I can't even think. So you're not ever going to get the best out of me, because you won't let me do what needs to be done. And also, the mistake of that type of leadership is that you bring people to the table because of their gifts and talents, but oftentimes micromanagement does not allow people to use their gift and talents, because they want to control the narrative or control what happens, or what if this goes wrong, or what. But you hired these people, you hired whoever is on your team in order to do something different and outside of the box. If you could have figured it all out, you wouldn't have needed them. Right. And so that is often the mistake that happens on teams. And so that's great advice. And for people to really understand, to build on that, if you don't like that being done to you, then making a conscious effort not to be that type of leader. I've watched people elevate and hate a certain practice, and then when they get in the position of leadership, they do the exact same thing that was done to them. So the same thing that they hated, the same thing they complained about, the same thing that bothered them, then they get in a position and they do the same thing to people. And so just understanding that there are examples for us to, and I've said this before as well, for not just for us to model, but also for us to be very clear about what kind of leader we don't want to be. You
Right.
you you learn from everything. Like everything is a lesson, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so either it's something positive that I can take from this, or it's learning. So then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do things completely different moving forward. So that is so good. And so, to continue to build on that, innovation often emerges from connection. And so we talked about this unity piece. And so how can leaders be intentional? You kind of hit on it a little bit, but just for you to expound a little bit more about what they could be doing in order to help their teams gel together, in order to create these type of collaborative spaces. And you mentioned before team building. So what are some things that you might suggest for teams to try on in order to build their team? Because some people, and I've been in that place too, where team building has been like a buzzword, but it's like, what can I do to actually build my team? And this being your area of expertise, like what would you suggest that teams try to do in order to gel together, to build that strength, so that they can create environments where collaboration and that unity can thrive?
Mm-hmm. So, let me just go back to, and I'm definitely going to answer the question, but let me just go back to, um, first thing is you have to know your team, right? And you have to know the gifts that's on the inside of them, right? In I believe it's in Corinthians, there is a scripture in the Bible that talks about we have this treasure in the earthen vessel, right? So the treasure, or we have this treasure in jars of clay. Of course,
Mhm.
we're clay, right?
Yeah.
Um, you have to know what they're called to, period. So we can talk about collaborating and coming together, but I think a team appreciates you when you are trying to find out what they're good at. Who are they? What's their purpose, right? So, for example, there are people on my team that are creatives. They come up with the ideas. Hey, Mr. Keisha, I got this idea. I got this idea. Let's go here. Let's go. Let's have something at Starbucks, or let's do a weekend getaway, a girls trip, or let's do this. And I found, they're the creatives, and they come up with the different um, meetings that we have, being creative. And then we have, some of the people that are in the background. And what that looks like is their administrative gift, right? Administrative gift is where, you say, okay, that's paperwork, that's a secretary. No, all joint supply. We need that. And then we have, we have the ruler gift. That ruler, that one, can run the whole thing if I was out, that they can basically take over in a good way. So we got to know what their spiritual gifts are. Do they have a prophetic gift? Do they have, I'm trying to think of the gifts over my head, the gift that, gift of, what's that called? Exhortation,
Mm-hmm.
the different gifts. What type of, do they have an evangelist type of gift? An evangelist type of gift is a people person. They
Mm-hmm.
love people. So if you want to take that over to the world, it's people. They're like, I'm that's one of my gifts, exhortation. So I'll be in the grocery store and I'm like, hey, I don't care what color you are, how about this ketchup? Have you tried this
Yes.
today? Something like that. Like, have you tried? I know if you pick up this ketchup, it's what kind of, oh yeah, this ketchup, the spicy ketchup. Oh yeah, it's not good. Oh girl, don't get that. It doesn't matter. So I'm a, I'm a, I'm a, I'm a talker, that's who I am. So finding out what their gifts are, right? And minding the gift out of them, right? The diamond in the rough. That's your responsibility as a leader. Once you find that, right? And you get that, that treasure, within. And the more you spend time, as we've been building on the questions, um, then you can go into the, collaborating and coming together and, thinking about the different ways that we can even be more one,
Mm-hmm.
and once you find out what their gifts are, What is their, give them responsibility, as far as those gifts, challenge them in those gifts, like period. So there's a book that I'm reading. It's called Mentoring You. It is by our co-pastor from our church. She's actually the leader over women's ministry at Mount Gilead Full Gospel International Ministries in Richmond, Virginia. And I'm so excited to be under her, leadership. But she, in her book, I don't know, it's called Mentoring You, but oh, the camera can pick it up. But I want to read a quote in here from that. Um, and it's so awesome because at the beginning, she talks about, find those mentors that, or those leaders that she connected to. And because of that, this is what happened. So I'm going to just read a little passage from here. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
okay. So, um, so it says here, and this is page 13. It says, as I began to pursue, so basically it was two women that she found to, as far as mentors. So, and then she talks about, as I began to pursue these two women and their ministries to women, I realized that I too had a passion for women's ministry. So remember I talked about the mirror, you know, the gifts and calling that I saw in them awakened the gifts that were dormant within me. God strategically locked away a tremendous treasure inside of me to be unlocked by those who held the key. My mentors were equipped to unlock the gifts God placed within me. They were uniquely qualified to mine the treasure within me. Only a person with the key who has already paid the price is qualified to release what is in you. Have you been drawn to someone who holds the key to your destiny? So a leader holds the key, right, to unlock the gifts. And that's if you want it, right? Yeah. So once you establish that, that's when you can, we can talk about collaborating and what are the, as far as team building, exactly where and what do you do, as far as, those pieces.
So good, so good. And, again, hitting on that, it is so important to, get to know who you're dealing with and how to reach them and what will work. And as you learn your team, you are able to bring them together in ways that is phenomenal. You think about, even with our team that we work with, our team is starting to, we have a fairly new team because it's been a lot of moving pieces, but we are all coming together in different ways and understanding how our gifts flow together and how we support each other. And that makes for when we do have our encounters, it makes it for even more powerful because everybody is playing their role in their position. We all help each other, but it's kind of, it's becoming more of a family type of feel instead of it just being individual people. And, when you think about having those mentors, having those people that you can look up to, that you can talk to, that can help pull you or really pull you into the place where you're supposed to be. When you talk about like mining the gift, these people are pulling things out of you that you didn't even know existed. And how valuable that is, because not everyone has that. And so I think that sometimes leaders get into this place of like, I have to have all the answers. And so therefore I can't reach out if I need someone, or I can't say like, hey, I'm struggling here, I need a little bit of help. And, you hit on that point that it's always more, like our bishop says that all the time, that there's always more, and there is. And so you don't get to that more by thinking that you got it all figured out. You can always be better. And I think the best leaders are the leaders who understand that there is more, that they can gain more, whether it's that I need to get a mentor, I need to read a book like Mentor in Me, I need to mentor you, I need to cultivate these gifts that's on the inside. And again, us being Christian leaders, praying, Lord, show me who I'm supposed to be connected to. Show me who is going to help bring that out of me. How am I going to get to that next season? I know right now, God has put a lot of different people in my life that I didn't even see coming and didn't expect, but they are even coming to me. It's some people that I'm watching and I'm like, okay, I'm gleaning from this. Again, I've learned a lot from your leadership style of the type of leader I want to be and how I interact with people. But there are also other people that God is just sending my way. And they're like, hey, you were on my mind. And God said, I had a leader, call me just a couple of days ago who's doing amazing things. And she was like, you were on my mind. And during this time period, I just want you to ask me any questions that you want answers to. I was like, okay, thank you. And yes, can you explain this and this? Because this is the place, where we are. But it takes really you submitting yourself in leadership to say, like, Lord, I need you to help me to be the best leader. I need you to help me to take care of these gifts, these treasures that you have placed in my life, right? Because that responsibility of leadership is that you are responsible for making these people better and for pulling those things out. And so you have to be really, really mindful of what that role is that you play and how valuable it is for you even to be able to submit yourself, to ask for help when you need it, and to ask God to show you how to best govern the people that are under you.
Agreed, definitely. Yeah, I also see leadership as, leadership style, I would say for me would be childlike, and that sounds like, a child, think about a child, innocent, right? When I think about your daughter, we call her baby prophetess. But when I think about her, it's like it's like automatically she'll give you a hug. You know what I'm saying? That's what a leader would do. Like the steps of a child. They're innocent. They're not judging. They're not thinking about anything. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't see, what you did wrong and all that type of stuff, but they see the gift. When I say, like I say, they see the gift, but they're kids. But a childlike is like it's an innocence where what they're seeing is not what they see. Like there's it's almost like through the eyes of God's perspective. God doesn't see all the bad things I've done, all of that. He doesn't see that. He sees what I'm becoming. He sees who I'm called. What my call is, what my gift is. He sees. All. When I'm been also meditating on. I'm looking away because I have my Bible here, but First Corinthians, the love scripture. It's patient, kind, not jealous, boastful, not boastful, not proud, not rude. That's a child. Think about it. Kids say, "Oh, you want to play outside?" Okay, they're playing, outside on the swings, and unless they're learned or they're taught that, but truthfully, leadership should be so childlike. Definitely. So.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And as you hit on, like, not holding things against people, not being this retaliation type of spirit, or if something happened yesterday, it happened. We moving past it. Let's keep it moving. But that fuels that ability to unite and to have that collaboration, understanding. And you mentioned this earlier in the podcast, having that grace, because there's a lot of leaders that want grace, but they really struggle to give grace.
Say so.
And right. So, you have to be in that place where it's like, okay, we all have human centered. We all have good days. We all have days. It's like, okay. And some of us get into a place where it's like, Lord, I wish that I wouldn't have done that, or I wish that wouldn't happen. And to know that your leader is not going to hold it against you. Your team has been taught, because the leader models what they want to see, that we don't do that here. We're not going to have all this cattiness. We're not going to be fussing and fighting and tearing each other down, because all of those things create toxic environments where people can't gel together, where unity doesn't happen, where there's no
Mhm.
collaboration or innovation.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
that's so powerful as well.
Yeah. You know, thank you for inviting me. This has really been wonderful. And, one of the things that I would say as far as leadership goes also is ask God to show you who your people are, right? And so I recently, got married, well, not recently, but 5 years ago. And I was divorced, for a while. I was divorced for a little over 10 years. And so it was just me, single, and my children, they're grown now. But um, I told God, I said, I'm open to being married again and everything. And so now, this man of God that I have now, I'm grateful. But one of the prayers I pray is, Lord, show me who he is. Show me, because, God has the blueprint on the person, right? He created
Yeah.
the person. So he knows everything that we don't know, right? He's given us, an assignment to oversee or to mentor or to lead. But Lord, show me, help me to see these people from your eyes, your perspective. You know what I'm saying? And um I remember it's a scripture in the Bible that talks about when Jesus saw the sheep, he wept. And it was like, he thought like it's a sheep without a shepherd. And when he saw them, you know, who they really are, what they're going through, or whatever the case may be. But that's my prayer, I would say, is to make sure that you're asking God, show me my people, who, whether it's your children, whoever it is. Because think about it, even as a wife, you're a leader. You lead. I mean, of course your husband's the leader, but in some aspects, what I'm saying, you got that. So what Lord, who is this person? Show me. That's one thing that you can do, is ask God for that. And then also, um when you have to, like, say correction goes, hate to say correct, right? But let's say, and I hate to say discipline, but I would say um opportunity, right? So I learned this from someone, who's, I definitely honor. And she said, you make a sandwich, right? So you have the bread, right? So the bread is what they did well, you know, coaching, what they did well. Hey, you're doing a great job with this, and all. And the meat is the opportunity. Okay, well, here's the opportunity, right? And then the bread is more patting on the back, more love, more encouragement, versus, oh yeah, why'd you do that? And no, make that, I call it a coaching sandwich. Make that coaching sandwich. So for example, if you have someone, you give somebody an assignment to do, and they felt like, you know what, yeah, I hear you, but let me do it this way, this seems a little better, right? So you can say, for example, um okay, well, that you did a great job. That's a great idea of what you did. But ask the question. Here go the meat. The meat is, well, what made you come up with that? You know, let them speak and explain, and don't make them feel like, okay, am I in trouble? No. Tell me, how did you come up with that? And then they'll say, okay, well, this is the reason why I did that. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great. And then here come the meat. That's great. However, and then you go into the reasons why, do it the way I asked you to do it, because of, liability, whatever the case, whatever reasons why you would bring, why this is why I asked you to do it this way. And then the bread is, but you are doing a great job, period. So, and then, just explaining, we all want to be on the same page. So that's something that you can do. Just, you gotta, going back to the beginning, you have to love your people. You have to understand where they came from, and respect that, period. Just respect, who they are. and then look for those gifts. You should be a treasure finder. That's what a leader is, period. And that's my leadership style is, that treasure within, because someone did it for me. I have mentors that challenged me, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't think I could do that, but I did it. And if you listen to your leaders, you'll grow. But if your leader, getting back to the beginning, ChèRee, we talked about, are you worth following? Who's leading you? Who's over you? Are you in your word? Are you reading, books to strengthen and build you up? What are you doing as well? As far as that goes. I mean, like if you want your people to be on time, or to the meetings or whatever, are you on time? Are you on time? What do you do? What are you sacrificing? As far as that goes. So
No, that was so good. And even, as you to add on to that, as you said, you pray about, Lord, show me my people, but also, Lord, show me me. Right? Like if there's something that is out of alignment in me, please show me so that I can correct it. And I think that does happen a lot. Sometimes people are very critical of what other people are doing, but what are we taking a step back? And we went back to it, am I the type of person that people want to follow? And if not, then there's some correction needs to happen, because a lot of times people get in leadership positions and they have not done the work that is necessary in order for them to lead with love, and for them to take those really take into consideration those things that are not happening or that need to happen for the people that they say that they care about or that they're trying to lead. And so that is so good. So many different nuggets that have been hit on. And so I think that it all comes back to, as well, like these mindset shifts, like people learning how to think about things differently, and from a different perspective. And again, you already kind of hit on this as well, because it does take all those things that you just talked about. It takes the self-work, it takes you being in your word, it takes spending time with the Lord in order for those things to happen. So is there anything else that you think that would be helpful for people when we're thinking about really shifting their mindsets? Because all of us are come to a place where we have to start thinking about things differently in order to go to another level. Even if you're kind of good at what you do, like it comes a time where you have to start thinking about things on a larger scale, or what's next. Because if we believe in this concept that there's always more, that means that we have to prepare ourselves for the more.
So I would say, there's something that's really, really important, that I would say to, hopefully they'll sum everything up, is as a leader, right? Before you can get into what you've asked and everything, as a leader, you have to be okay with admitting when you're wrong, right? I remember growing up, and when I knew my parents, like, Mom, you were wrong. You spanked me for nothing. And then my mom would be like, well, then just save that one for the next one. So when you do something, I won't. That'll be a new hold that spanking. I'm like, what? And I'm like, ma'am, no, that's not. that's not. That's not how it goes. But it's okay, as a leader, and this will help with mindsets and everything, is admitting when you're wrong, right? So I recently, had one of my leaders. I apologized because I said, "Hey, we haven't gotten together. We haven't gotten together to train like I want to, And even though this wonderful leader is full speed ahead doing well, there's some administrative things that I didn't really go over. So you can't get mad at or upset at someone that doesn't know. You did not show them, right? So the first thing I did was say, "Hey, I want to apologize because I didn't give you the proper expectation of what you're supposed to be doing in this space." And and I remember, my mentor was, telling me, you should do that, and I said, oh my God, that's going to be hard to do because I'm going to admit that I'm wrong. And but I did it, and I'm grateful for that. But once I did that, what I noticed afterwards is that me and that leader's relationship, the person I'm over, relationship got even closer because they're like, oh man, wow. She showed me, I showed that person my heart, that I'm human and I make mistakes, right? And I'm still a leader. So as a leader, creating the question you were saying about the mindset, right? Creating that collaborative mindset, all of that, they got to know that you are real, period, and that you make mistakes and you're not all there. You need God, period. You don't have it all. You don't have it all together. But I think, I hope I answered your question. I didn't get off. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was a great answer and a great piece of advice because we know people in leadership often posture like, again, we kind of mentioned that earlier, like we got it all together, but it does mean a great deal more to your team when they see that you are human, that they don't have to reach this level of perfectionism, right? That I can't make mistakes. But if the leader is saying it's okay to make mistakes, I make mistakes, we're all human, then it really takes some of that weight off of them. And so just amazing way for, people to start to shift the way that they think about what leadership is. And I think a lot of times we get into these toxic examples of leadership because of what we have seen modeled for us. And so changing that narrative will, again, I talk about all the time, as leaders, we have the responsibility of building other leaders. So people should grow their leadership capacity by being under us. And that is a powerful way for us to do this, is by showing this is what real leadership looks like. It is not perfect. It is not, I got all the answers. It's not, I don't ever make a mistake. It is, I'm real. I'm showing up and I'm being who God called me to be. And that means that I have to work day in and day out, right? Like the word says, you have to literally die daily in order for you to step in and be who God called you to be, and understanding that is okay. Absolutely.
Agreed, definitely.
Yes. Well, I thank you so much for joining me for this conversation today. This has been absolutely amazing. So many powerful nuggets. And for my listeners, I hope that you will go back and listen to this over and over again, because this will help to build your leadership capacity. A lot of the things that Overseer Kisha mentioned in this podcast also are in our leadership book for this month. So if you have opportunity tomorrow night and you're available to join us via Zoom for this conversation, the book that we have been reading is called Ignite Culture. And so if you haven't had a chance to read the book, that's fine. You can still join in the conversation because it will be more of this, but it will be in person. Well, not in person. It's on Zoom, but it will be live, so you can have conversation back and forth. But this has been completely beyond even what my expectations were. So obviously, Kisha, I so appreciate you. I appreciate your time, your effort, your commitment to women and to helping them to be better and to grow. Again, Rise and Lead Women's Leadership Perspectives is here twice a month, every second and fourth Thursday, having great conversations like this. We are saying bye-bye to March, but April will bring another great opportunity for us to get together. If you are interested in any any type of leadership coaching or any type of leadership consulting, please do not hesitate to reach out to dpdei.com. Also, be sure to check out this episode on YouTube and Spotify. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share, because there's so many things and so many people need to get in on this. Overseer Kisha, again, thank you so much, so much. Her information will also be included in this, and we will see you next time. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you.